Welcome back to a week 2 reflection from our Penn State Masters of Strategic Management Executive Leadership course. Week 2 really challenged some assumptions about leadership that are kind of worth diving into. So let's get started. So we tend to think of authority as performance and incentives that drive outcome. But it's not really that way. So strategy at an executive level and in real life is more about the systems and perceptions and the human behavior. So ultimately, we don't necessarily follow authority, we follow people. So authority is not the same as power. Formal roles do not guarantee someone influence. It puts them in a position where they can be seen as influential or powerful, but doesn't guarantee it. Authority only exists when people accept it. This is one of the challenges when it comes to being in positions of authority. Compliance can be forced, but then our commitment cannot be forced. So we can have compliance where people do things reluctantly, but commitment is doing something willingly. Leaders tend to lose their effectiveness when they rely on their positions rather than the legitimacy of their role. So the legitimacy of their role comes from building trust and fairness and alignment. So we want to have trust built within our team so they'll come to us and believe that we have their best interests at heart. So we can assign responsibility, but we can't assign belief. It's a really important concept for us to understand. So performance alone doesn't determine who succeeds in an organization because these are social systems and they're not just performance machines. So the visibility of us in a system does matter because if people don't know you, they're not going to be able to understand the work you do. Alignment with the priorities of an organization also matter because you don't want someone who's gone rogue. Relationships shape the access and then the support and opportunity to grow within an organization as well. So influence tends to grow through our networks, not just our output. So we are social beings. We have to advocate for ourselves, but also have to put in the work. So work has to be done well, but it's also important for us to understand that we need to be seen, we have to be connected, and we have to be part of the strategy within our organizations to have a say and input to grow influence. So the psychology as well that we talk about is related to incentives because incentives tend to change our behavior. But the challenges with external incentives like money tend to narrow our focus. So people optimize often for what is measured and think that the only things that really matter are measurable in terms of revenue. So in our external incentives can exclude our external motivation. So the problem with external motivations is often and extrinsic rewards is often they narrow our focus. So people will often do the tasks that can be measurable and start focusing on the things that are intangible that are not measurable. So our external incentives can often kind of crowd out our internal or intrinsic motivation. This is really challenging where we do things to increase activity, but this also then decreases our ownership. We constantly are looking for the reward for the reason why we do things rather than doing it because it's the right thing. So there is a distinction where incentives drive effort, but then our purpose drives our commitment. So if there's an alignment is missed between our commitment and our purpose and then our motivations, then it'll be very challenging to have buy-in with our teams ultimately. So also we want to talk about the differences between compliance and commitment because incentive-heavy systems often create rule followers, but not necessarily problem solvers. And so if we have a bunch of rule followers who can't think for themselves and are always asking for judgment, then ultimately it's really hard to be effective in those roles. So how do we differentiate between compliance and commitment? So if incentives are heavy in a system, they often create rule followers, but not necessarily problem solvers for the organization. So people then ask, what do I have to do, right? So how do I get that treat? Rather than what should I do to help build this organization? So it's a me focus rather than an organization focus when there's too many extrinsic motivation and incentives. And over time, this limits our adaptability as well as our innovation. So we get a lot of lemmings, essentially, in our organization. So strategic leadership often means designing environments where people choose to engage rather than they're forced to engage or they're being only engaging due to external incentives. So what does this mean for leadership? Leadership is less about control and it's more about creating conditions where people can be successful as individuals as well as in a group. Conditions must be built upon trust, conditions must be built upon ownership, and conditions must be built upon alignment, aligning that our conditions with our purpose ultimately. So systems matter as much as the people involved, right? We can build a great team, but we have to have all those pieces aligned because they have to work together. And ultimately, authority has to be accepted for it to work. Performance must be visible. It also must be aligned with the organization. And then our incentives must be carefully designed to create that alignment. But lasting performance is often a combination of aligning our purpose with our own ownership as well. So the goal for all organizations is to make people who choose to commit rather than someone who are forced to comply. So week 2 of the Strategic Management and Executive Leadership Program had some great pearls that focused on building power and influence, as well as how organizations run coherently by improving the business architecture within the organization. So thank you, and stay tuned for next week.